He calls them back to the inheritance he signed. His children have been fighting for a wage when he already named them heirs. They try so hard to earn what was already given to them in Christ. They keep checking the scoreboard, measuring their worth by the latest battle. But his word says in Romans 8:17, if children then heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ, they are not hired hands trying to keep their place. They are children named in the will. They are heirs, not hired help. And right now, as these words reach them, he wants that settled fact to become the ground they fight from. Instead of the prize they fight for, he draws them closer. Nothing has to be settled. Nothing has to be earned. Before they are welcome to lay this down and breathe, he is not standing back, arms folded, until they pull themselves together and prove they are worth approaching. He invites them just as they are, worn thin, anxious, unsure they have anything left for the next round, and their place in the house will not even flinch at the state they are in. It was never grading them. It has only ever been holding their names. There is something he wants them to understand about how closely he has been watching, because this is not a message addressed to a crowd. It is addressed to them inside the particular life they woke up to. Some of them treat every setback as a ruling on whether they belong here at all. One thing goes wrong, the floor tilts, and a voice they never invited starts reading the verdict back as a sentence. This is who they are. This is what they are worth. This is how it always ends for someone like them. A father works a second shift doing the right thing over and over, yet still lies awake feeling he fell short of a standard no one will ever say out loud. A mother reads the message from the school twice, skating past the actual words, searching for the buried line that says she failed her child. Not one of those moments is too small to register with him. Not one slips by while his attention is elsewhere. There is a tally running behind their eyes, a scoreboard they check before they have even opened them for the day before. Their feet hit the floor before the day has done anything at all to deserve the grade they greet it with. The friend who used to ask how the fight was going does not ask anymore, and the silence where that question used to live has its own ache. Their prayers have quietly shrunk over the months, from sentences to a few words, from a few words to a single held breath they push toward the ceiling some nights, too tired to shape it into words. He has not missed a single one of those breaths. And here is the first thing he needs then to hear before anything else. None of it changes a word of his truth. Written, the scoreboard they keep checking is not the document that decides who they are. Some of them do the arithmetic alone. Late after the house has gone quiet, the careful figuring of what is left, what is owed, how thin the margin is, worn. The same numbers run again and again as if one more pass might make them land softer. And some have stopped telling anyone how heavy it had grown, partly out of breathe, partly out of a dread that letting the truth out would only confirm the worst thing they suspect about themselves. They have been guarding their struggle the way a person guards something fragile, because somewhere they decided that the size of their fight is proof of their failure. It is not. The weight they carry is not the measure of their worth. And the thing they have been so afraid would be exposed about them was never the truth about them in the first place. The truth about them is written somewhere. Their secrets cannot touch in a will, in his own hand. They have been told in 100 quiet ways that added up over a long time that they are a hired hand and not an heir. that they have to clock the hours, that they have to hit the number, that love and belonging and any good thing coming their way are wages, and wages can be docked. And wages talk the moment they stop performing, and one bad month puts them right back at nothing. Nobody handed them that belief in a single sentence. It crept in slowly from 100 small experiences, from approval that arrived only after achievement, from rooms where they learned that they were welcome as long as they were useful. And so they have come to fight like a person defending a paycheck they are terrified of losing, gripping every small gain with white knuckles, because somewhere underneath they believe it can all be clawed back if they slip even once. They close their eyes for one slow breath, here, just one, before they read another line. And while they are closed, sensing how braced their whole body is, they set off their shoulders, the readiness in their jaw. The way some part of them is always half expecting the next loss. That bracing is not weakness. It is the posture of someone who thinks everything they have is on loan and could be repossessed. The Lord speaks directly to the posture. He wants to loosen it from the inside, not by telling them to try harder to relax, but by showing them what was actually written about them long before they learned to brace. Consider how exhausting it is to live as a worker who is never quite sure of their place. Such a person can never fully rest, because rest itself feels like a risk. They read every silence as disapproval and every setback as a warning. They celebrate a good day with one eye already on tomorrow, waiting for it to be taken back, because in the economy of wages nothing is ever truly safe. That is the weight they have been carrying into their battles, not just the fight itself, but the fear that losing might cost them their entire home. They have been fighting two battles at once, the one right in front of them, and the deeper doubt over whether they have any right to even stand there at all. The Lord wants to end that second struggle, so they only have to face the first. And here is the truth they struggle to actually believe. The covenant was signed before the battle ever started. Consider a worker who keeps a running list in the back of their mind. The late arrival, the email they answered to slowly the day they were impatient with someone they love, a mental ledger of every single reason they might be cast aside. Many believers have kept that same list about God for years. They add to it after every bad day. They read it back to themselves in the dark, convinced it builds a strong case against them. But he is not building that case. The Lord never opens that file. A wage keeps a person watching the clock and measuring their mistakes. An inheritance lets a believer stop counting, because that gift was never theirs to lose. But they must listen, because this is where the lie begins to shatter. A wage can be docked. What God holds for them cannot. The image of Him they have carried was built up slowly over many years by teachers who passed down a God who keeps a ledger, a God who pays out when people perform and withholds when they fall short, a God whose warmth rises and dips with their latest result, pleased on their good weeks, cool and distant on their bad ones. Essentially a boss with a clipboard, tracking whether they have earned their keep this quarter. Many come to view him as a manager hunched over a timesheet, tallying their hours, deciding whether they have done enough to hold their spot. Some of those who painted him that way meant well. Some of them did not. Either way, That portrait was a forgery because he has never been standing over a timesheet at all. He has been standing over a testament with their name already written into it in ink. That does not wash out. The real Lord is not crossing his arms and waiting to see whether they justify their keep this here. The real Father is not running the numbers on their worth. The true Lord has already settled the portion over to them, set it aside where it cannot be lost. And what he signed was not in pencil. It cannot be erased by a bad season. It will not be revised because they stumbled. This divine gift was finished before they ever heard of it. And nothing they do today moves a letter of it. Hear this carefully because it is the line. There, fear cannot survive. A wage is earned and it is anxious and it is measured by the hour. An inheritance is received and it is secured and it is given to a child. Sit with the weight of that difference for a single moment because everything turns on it. A wage must be constantly renewed. An inheritance is given just once. A wage can be withheld the moment their output drops. What is kept for them does not depend on their output at all. A wage keeps them watching the clock. An inheritance lets them come home. They have fought their entire lives for a wage when they were born into an inheritance. They have been auditioning for a place at a table that already has their name carved into the chair. But an heir never auditions for the family. So when the Lord promises they will come, through that they will stand and not fall. That the burden pressing on them will not have the final word. He is not promising a wage. They must keep on earning. The victory they keep trying to seize is not the prize at the far end of the wall. The thing they finally grab if they fight well enough and long enough. It is the standing they already hold. It is the settled portion they are carrying into every single skirmish, whether they remember it or not. They do not fight in order to win. They do not fight to become an heir. They fight from the ground of being one. A hired hand fights to keep a place. An heir fights from a place already given. One is the posture of a worker who could be let go. The other is the posture of a child who already owns the field. The battle is happening on. And one must be careful with them here, because the word victory has been sold to them cheaply, and the Lord will not do that to them. He does not tell them this because they are His heirs, that every circumstance will bend the way they want it to by a date they mark. He does not promise that the wealth arrives this season, that the door opens on the timeline. They set that the person walks back through it, that the outcome they are bracing for is reversed on cue. Those who promise them those things on a schedule are selling them a wage and calling it a blessing. The victory He is putting under their feet is deeper and steadier than any single outcome. And it cannot be undone by a circumstance that does not move. It is this, that they belong to Him, that their name is in the will, that their standing as a child does not rise and fall with wins and losses. From that ground they can face an outcome that disappoints them and still not be defeated. Because the hand that actually held them was never the outcome. It was always the portion kept for them. So strip the word victory of its cheap meaning and let it carry its true one. Victory is not arranging the word to finally validate them. Victory is walking into the unresolved, unbeautiful middle of their situation as a secure child rather than an anxious employee. And discovering that the security holds, even when the situation does not. That is a victory nothing on the surface can take from them, because it was never stored on the surface to begin with. And that is precisely what the enemy of their peace cannot stand. They must listen, because here is where the hired hands lie. Breaks. He attacks the deed, not the estate, because the inheritance itself is out of his reach. It is not kept where his hands can go. It is not stored on the surface of their circumstances where a hard day can rob. So he targets the one thing he can touch, which is their confidence that it is theirs. He whispers that the will must have been a misunderstanding, that a child of God with their record, with their history, with the things they have done, and the things done to them, could not really have been named in it, that the next loss, the one that is surely coming, will finally expose them as an outsider who was never family at all. And here is what makes that voice so cruel. The loss he points at is often real. The grief is real. The setback actually happened. And truth does not pretend otherwise or ask them to call a wound something prettier than it was. But notice the trick. They must not confuse a battle with a lost inheritance. He takes their real loss and uses it to make a false claim about their standing as a child. The loss happened. Their standing did not move. Something real was taken from them, and it was painful. And the Lord was there in it. And it was never about their inheritance, because what is kept for them was never kept where any loss could reach it. The grief they felt was real. What the enemy claimed it proved was false. This truth stands completely clear. Their worst day did not demote them from heir to a servant. Behold this sacred message that was once written down for believers a long time ago. Not a cheap slogan, not a phrase for those who have their lives in order and only need a little more inspiration. These words were penned by a man writing to a small and frightened group of believers in the city of Rome. They were losing everything, living under pressure. They had every reason to feel like outsiders in their own lives and strangers to their own faith. They were not strong by any worldly measure. They were not victorious. They were not the ones the world point to as proof that following the Lord pays off. He did not write to praise champions. He was writing to the weary and the anxious souls, those who were not sure they belonged. He was writing in essence to someone exactly like them. There is great gentleness in that, because this was never meant to be verse debated in a lecture hall. The Lord did not record it so that scholars could pick apart the grammar. It was written for the exhausted soul seeking peace today, the soul who has been laboring like a servant and aching like an orphan, the one who needs to hear in the clearest terms what is actually true about who they are. This is what he declared. Romans chapter 8 verse 17. If children, then heirs, heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. Walk through this slowly, one phrase at a time, as every single word carries weight. Look closely at the order first. Children first and then heirs. The inheritance is never a reward for good behavior. It flows as a natural consequence of one truth, that they are his child. The word defining this entire promise is not earned, nor is it deserved, and it is not achieved. That word is heirs. An heir does not struggle to keep their name in the will. An heir is never demoted to a servant after a bad year. An heir inherits fully and securely, simply because of whose child they are, and they belong to him. None of those early believers in Rome had earned this by their record either. They were anxious, ordinary, and pressed on every side. Yet he called them heirs anyway, not because they deserved it, but because his son stood in their place and made them family at his own cost. Then comes the second half, which goes even further than they would ever dare to ask. co-heirs with Christ, not some distant relative receiving a minor gift from the estate, not a servant permitted to live near the house. The same standing as the Son himself, the full portion, a child named in the will with everything, belonging to the Son, now belonging to them as well. That is not a wage anyone could pay them. That is not a prize anyone could earn. It can only be received the way an inheritance is received through belonging, not by performing. And being joint heirs with Christ means the portion is never fragile. It doesn't shrink on the days they forget it. This shows exactly why their standing remains so unshakable because it cost everything to settle it. The Son took the place of a servant so they could take the place of children. He was treated as an outsider so they could be welcomed into the house. He was stripped so they could receive the robe. He was cast out so their names could be written in. He signed the inheritance with his own life. And what he sealed with blood can't be revoked by their worst day. That is why no accusation can rewrite it. The truth that proves they belong is not their performance on their best day. It is what he already finished on their behalf, and finished things can't be undone by their worst moments. Consider that truth very deeply because the whole posture of their life can shift inside it. He signed the inheritance with his own life, not with a promise that could break, not with a contract renewing each year, which lapses if they fall behind, with his life. And what is signed in that ink does not get reopened for review when they stumble. A bad month, wages can be docked the week their numbers drop. The portion he secured cannot be touched by their weakest season because the one who secured it is never weak, and he did not leave that document in their trembling hands. He keeps it himself. Their worst day did not demote them. It never could. The will was already settled in court. Their failure has no standing to appeal. A clause in that same passage goes on to state that the heirs share in his suffering as well as in his glory, and they should hear this not as a threat but as a tender comfort. It means on days when the fight is hard, they are not being demoted. They are not slipping from the family because the season is painful. The hearth road is the family road. The Son walked it first, and walking it never costs them their place. So, when they are in the thick of deep pain, they must not let the trial be read to them as evidence that they were never truly heirs. The trial is the exact path God's children walk, and the inheritance waits, unharmed at the end of it. Look closely at the order again because that order is everything. Child first, then heir, then the battle. Belonging comes before the inheritance, and inheritance comes before any battle they will ever face. They did not become children by winning. They did not earn the inheritance by their conduct in the battle. First, their belonging was settled, and from that place of belonging, inheritance was granted. Only when both promises were secured would they ever step onto a battlefield. So they do not fight for belonging. They are fighting from their belonging. They do not walk into hard trials as a hired hand, struggling to earn their right to stay in favor. They walk in as his children, with a sealed inheritance behind them that the day's outcome cannot ever touch. And what a glorious portion it is! It is truly imperishable. It never rusts in a slow year. It does not rot while they wait. It does not lose value when the season has been long and dry. It remains undefiled. Their worst choices do not stain it. Their failures cannot contaminate it. The things they are most ashamed of do not reach in to ruin it. It does not fade. It never grows dim with time. It will not weaken as they age. It will not slowly shrink while their backs are turned, and it is kept not in their trembling hands, where single slip could ruin it, where loss could ever reach it, or where thieves could break in. It is kept where the enemy cannot strike and their failures cannot reach, held for them by the one who signed it over, guarded by a divine strength that is not their own. Look back now to what was set in front of them when this began. They have been straining to earn a victory, fighting for a prize as if the outcome of the battle were the thing that decided whether they truly belong. And this is why their heart keeps seeing it that way. They have mistaken what is kept for them for a wage they might lose. They have been holding a secure gift in their hands while acting like someone clutching a paycheck. The will was signed before the battle began, and to ensure they would never have to wonder if it was really theirs, they were sealed, marked with his own spirit as the guarantee of the inheritance. Just as a document is stamped and witnessed so that no one can ever dispute whose name is on it, the seal is not their feeling. The seal is not their performance. The seal is his own spirit set on them, vouching for what is already theirs. So on the day they wake with no faith, they can feel when the assurance has drained out of them and the trial in front of them looks like a verdict. They are dreading the seal is still there. It does not lift when their confidence dips. It never rested on their confidence. It was placed by him, and it stays because he stays. So the struggle was never about whether they are his. That question was settled a long time ago, and it was not closed by then. The battle is not to become an heir. The struggle is simply to walk out day by day in the strength of what they already hold. That changes what courage even means. Courage is no longer gritting one's teeth to win something that might still go either way. Courage is remembering in the midst of the pressure that the verdict is already in. The will is already signed. The portion is already theirs. And then standing in that truth even when the day screams the absolute opposite. Here is one small practice for believers in the days ahead. When the next setback lands and that old voice rises to claim, this proves they do not really belong. They do not need to fight back. They do not need to win the debate out, shout it, or gather up their evidence. They can simply open a hand in their lap, palm turned up, the way a person holds their hand to receive a gift, rather than to grab or to guard, and quietly low enough that only the Lord hears. They can answer the lie with one true sentence. I am an heir, not a hire. One cannot expect it to change how they feel the first time they say it. It may do nothing the 10th time either. The bracing has lived in them for a long while, and the posture that all does not dissolve in a single afternoon. But after they have answered the accusation enough times with what is settled instead of with their effort, after the practice has worn a small groove in them, the grip across their chest will begin, almost without their noticing the moment. It happens to ease, because a part of them that has been braced for years will at last start to trust that their place was never up for review, that grace was never a wage in the first place, that it cannot be docked, cannot be clawed back, cannot be lost in a bad season, that they do not have to keep fighting to hold on to the gift that was given, to hold on to them. They know how strange it will feel at first to stop defending something that needs no defending. For a while they may even miss the struggle, because that struggle is familiar, and the battle gave them something to do with their fear. But slowly they will discover They can lay their weapons down without losing the ground beneath them, because that ground was never something they held by force. It was a promise they stood upon by grace. And holy ground like that never shifts. When they finally let themselves rest on it, there is a gentler way they can practice when no setback is in front of them at all. On an ordinary afternoon, when the old anxiety simply rises for no reason they can name, they can sit still for one breath and notice the urge to start earning again. They drive to make lists, to fix everything, to prove the day was not wasted. They do not have to obey it. They can let that urge pass through them. The way weather passes over a house that is not going anywhere. The house does not chase the storm. It does not bargain with the wind. It stands because of its deep foundation, alone. Believers are allowed to be dead still, not because nothing is wrong but because the one thing that could never go wrong was already settled before they woke up. And here is one more small thing: if they want it for the moments right before they walk into something hard. The meeting, the conversation, the point they have been dreading, the room where they are afraid they will be measured and found wanting before they step through the door, taking a single moment to remember the order they were once shown. They might even say it under their breath as they reach for the handle. Child first, then Heir, then Bethel. They are not going in to earn their standing. They go in already holding it. Let those words go in front of them like someone walking ahead of them into the room. They are not entering as a hired hand, auditioning to keep their place. They are entering as someone whose place was settled long before this day arrived. Andonottai, Dato happens iru. That room can reach the will. They will not always remember to do this. They will forget, and the old posture will snap back, and they will catch themselves fighting for a wage again before they even realize it. That is all right. The inheritance does not get smaller on the days they forget. It is not a discipline they have to keep perfectly in order to deserve it. It is a fact they are slowly learning to lean on, and even their forgetting still cannot unsign the will. And on the days when no words cometh, all they breathe one long breath out, emptier and slower than they normally would. Let them breathe, and let that exhale stand in for their prayer. They do not have to pray it well. They do not have to pray at all. What is kept for them leans on the quality of their praying about as much as it leans on the quality of their fighting, which is to say, not in the least. It rests entirely on whose child they are, and that has not changed, nor is it about to. The will is signed. Their worst they did not revoke it. Their failure did not disqualify them. Their loss did not reach their portion. Their fear did not erase their name. They are not a hired hand waiting to be dismissed. They are a child in the house. They are an heir, and their portion is kept. Let them hold that picture before they move on. Not a paycheck they could lose by the end of the week. Not a wage they must keep re-earning, anxious and watching the clock, a name already in the will, sealed, witnessed, imperishable and undefiled, kept where no thief and no bad season and no failure of theirs can ever break in and carry it off. They are not a servant hoping to be kept on. They are a child, and the portion is already theirs. Amen. If this truth reached the part of them that has been laboring like a hired hand, afraid of being let go, they can type Heir below. Pinned at the top of the comments are 7 short letters, one for each of the next 7 days, for the times a believer feels like a servant rather than his cherished child. Share this with anyone who has been seeking a reward the Lord never asked them to earn. They were never mere servants in his house. They have always been his children.